Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me this morning for Propel Your Career in Final Year. Now, I can see many of you have popped your student ID in the chat. So if you haven't already, if you can pop that in for us, that would be fantastic. Just allows us to record your attendance and make sure that it's in our system, but it also means that you can look back at it in time and see what training and development you engaged in during candidature. And that can be really helpful for your annual progress report if you're being asked to provide information about the other things you have done during candidature. So thank you for popping your student number in the chat. Little housekeeping at the moment, what we're going to do until we see what numbers come through, if you don't mind keeping your microphone and camera off. But if our numbers stay low, I'm very happy for conversations through this session to be via your camera and microphone. We will use the chat function throughout, so there'll be a few things today where I will ask you to pop some things in the chat so that we can learn what your thoughts are, gain your insights, and be able to share together as a group. I'd like to acknowledge the Turrbal and Yagara as the First Nation owners of the lands where QUT now stands. I pay respect to their elders, laws, customs and creation spirits, and recognise that these lands have always been places of teaching, research and learning. I acknowledge the important role that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people play within the broader QUT community, but also for those who are involved in this webinar today. Now, I am guessing that many of you are in your final year, hence this webinar attracted your interest. But in case you're in final year and this is your first webinar or you're new to QUT, just a quick update that my name is Georgia Riddler. I am from the GRED team, which stands for Graduate Research, Education and Development. And our team's purpose is to curate online training to help you advance your research, lead your career and engage with industry, okay? And that's through 3 main pathways and we offer those year round. Now online with me today as well as Alexandra. Alexandra is within our GRED team. Alexandra actually oversees the online modules that many of you may have already engaged in, which are the 5-week online modules through the eGrad school. So Ola is there. She's in the background just helping out if there's any problems or questions. She'll be able to assist us. Okay. Now, I've spoken to this many times before and hopefully many of you are aware of this, but about 3 years ago, GRED did a benchmarking report and review across universities and industry sector and identified the top 20 HDR graduate skills that are important for HDR careers in industry or academia. So you'll see around the wheel here that under the 3 core areas, we have a list of the different skills. Now, this is really important for you, particularly now that you're in final year, because what you're wanting to do is identify what skills you are strong in, what skills you need more experience in, and what opportunities are here at the university while you're a student that you can engage in for free. Because once you step out, all of this professional development outside a university sector does cost. So make the most of this while you are here. If you haven't engaged in it, there's a link at the bottom that you can see there that takes you straight to the online assessment tool that allows you to self-assess and determine which skills are strong and need development. And then you'll be linked to the actual offerings or the events that we offer that help you develop those skills. So it's quite a unique opportunity we are the only university in Australia, and I think we're still at the moment the only university around the world that has this offering for HDR students. So, welcome to Propel Your Career in Final Year. I have 3 goals for us for today. Goal number 1 is to clarify the graduate research career landscape. So I just want to talk to you about what the landscape looks like and different ways in which we can look at it. I want to share with you some key strategies. I've got 5 of them that enable graduate success. Okay, and each of you might be at different stages and might take each step a little bit differently, but I want to share these with you today. And I also want to share a range of what I would call career enhancing opportunities that are available to you still in final year that you can make the most of. So before we begin, I want to know a little bit about you, and I'm keen to know through the poll that I'm going to launch here. In terms of graduate employment, how prepared do you feel? Now, I've ticked this as anonymous, so I'm not going to see who's who on this call or on this webinar, but I'm curious to know where you sit, whether you feel quite unprepared, whether you feel somewhat prepared, or whether you're feeling very prepared. And that will give us an idea of where we need to go today. All right, so it looks like most of you, a few more are popping their votes in. Thank you for that. 70, 80%. Okay, all right, well, I've got most of you there. I'll give you about 10 more seconds if you haven't popped your vote in, and then I'll end that and share that with you so you can see. Great. All right, so here are the results so you can see what I can see. Obviously, about 60% of us feel somewhat prepared, which is great. It's great that you're in a place where you feel like, I think I know, I'm feeling prepared. And some of you feel quite unprepared, and that's normal and natural in your final year, particularly if you are in final year. And what the idea is today is I'll provide you some insights, some tips, some ways to move forward. But along the way, trust me, you'll realise that you're not as unprepared as you thought. Okay, and sometimes it's about stepping back and having someone separate to yourself point out what is available and what skills and assets you already have. All right, so bear with me today, we'll walk it through, and I want to keep the conversation as open as possible. I don't want this to just be a one-way today as much as we can. Lovely, so thank you for sharing with that poll, that's great. Okay, so keep teaching me. My role is to be here and share some insights with you as to what I think, but I'm curious to know why you're attending. So at the moment we have about 21 of you on this webinar, and I'm curious to know if you can share in the chat and take your time, because I know it's sometimes you need to just think a bit about it. Why are you attending today? What attracted you? Was it just the sense of unpreparedness? Or are there key things that you feel like you don't know enough about? All right, so throw it in there. I'm going to make some notes of what I see come through. And even if I don't have it in my set slides today, I have space to be able to talk to any of the issues or concerns or questions that you have. Okay, because this is all about you today. All right, I have my pen and paper. Why are you attending today? Throw it into the chat function for me. And don't even be afraid to say, I don't even know where the jobs are, because again, you're not expected to know. You're in final year. These are the questions you should have. So, and I will walk you through that. We have the hour and a half. Thank you, Michael, for your honesty. Yeah, so submitted your thesis. You're still yet to find employment, and you're here to find some strategies to boost your chances. Well, good on you. I think that's hats off to you for joining in and listening in today, and let's find some strategies for you. It's a journey, it's a process, yeah. People want to know as much as possible about what kind of options are available to graduates. Good. Zoe, quite similar, know when she should start applying and looking for roles. Yeah, it's a bit of tricky knowing how much time do I focus on writing up and the final seminar and then have time to actually apply for jobs. Really good points. George, you're in your final year too. Yeah, so a few tips. This is lovely to see some of you who I worked with a couple of years ago, and as time's gone on, oh my gosh, you're in your final year. This is exciting. Valeria, unsure about the career landscape after finishing and struggling to find the pathway. Understandable. Okay, this is good. Want to know if there are opportunities, especially for those in the education field. Yeah, it seems like a lot of opportunities are in STEM. Yep, okay, good. Okay, I'm just making some notes of those. And if anything else comes up, put it in there. Tapping in job searching, tips, pathways. Nice one, Kelsey. Yeah, you don't know what you don't know, do you? So come along and see what some of the priorities are. And if then questions come throughout this session, let's just throw it up there because I'm sure everyone else has the same questions. What options are available after a PhD? Okay, yeah, that's fine. We can explore that too. Final seminars in August. So you wanting to be prepared. Lovely. Okay, yeah. Great. Okay. All right, yep, people wanting to maximise final year, good. And prepare, okay. All right, guys, thank you so much for sharing. Sometimes I ask questions like this and we'll only have 3 or 4 students pop in some feedback, but that really helps me. I would probably say to you 70% of that we will already tick off in this webinar anyway, but there are a few extra things that I will point to. And there's also some additional webinars that you may have missed out on that I'll point you to in terms of the recordings and resources, okay? Let me just highlight the fact that it's not about just feeling like you attend a webinar or you look at your career planning for a week and then boom, you're gonna feel all organised and ready to go and here's the pathway and you're off and racing. It's not like that, okay? Career planning is actually a lifelong journey and you will continue to plan and shape and change and adjust along the way. The hard part, of course, is that stage of transitioning from academia as a student into the workforce and knowing how to navigate that transition. And so I will share with you today some tips to be thinking about in terms of navigating that transition, okay? And again, as I say, it is a process. So it is going to take time because a lot of it requires your ability to meet people, learn more, gather data, and then take steps forward. All right, so let's walk together through this. And again, at the end, if you feel that I haven't touched or answered the question that you're particularly asking, we're going to get you to throw it back in the chat and we'll answer them. All right. Great. Thank you for all of your sharing. That's fantastic. All right, so let's start here. The graduate researcher career landscape has changed. Now, it hasn't changed today. It hasn't changed just because of COVID. It has changed and adapted over the last, more likely the last 5 to 7 years as academia has changed, okay? University budgets have changed and that has impacted, and well, not just university budgets have changed. The number of PhD and MPhil positions within universities has increased, which I guess suggests a bigger difference between the supply and demand, right? So therefore, that landscape has changed. Many of you will have anticipated stepping into an academic role, but a lot of that will have to adjust now. Now, that doesn't mean that just because an academic pathway may not be available now, that doesn't mean it's not available ever. It just means that you may need to ebb and flow, or you might need to pivot and adjust. And that is going to be the case for everyone. This isn't just research graduates. This is everyone who graduates, particularly this year, but over the next few years, will need to be thinking, pivoting and adjusting and just adding to their backpack of skills and experiences that keep building their CV and their connections towards the dream job or the job that you're really wanting or the career direction that you're wanting to go, okay? So it is a process. Just move this over. Okay. Now, for some of you, it might feel like the landscape looks like this. And that's because you're probably seeing in the media or in conversations that there's a decline in academic positions, tightened university budgets, business shutdowns, and job cuts. Now, prior to COVID-19, there was already the decline in academic positions. COVID-19 sure has amplified that, but has amplified that across many different sectors. And with the glass half empty type of mindset, the future could look bleak like this image. And that's fair enough to sometimes be thinking that. But what I'm going to ask you to do is draw on your creative and critical thinking skills, which all of you have, okay? Now, even as a STEM researcher, you will still have creative thinking skills because that's what researchers require. Creative thinkers look for gaps, look for things that are not said or not noticed, okay? That is a creative thinking skill as well as a scientific skill. So when you look at the landscape and you think, oh gee, there's not much, this is a bit scary, I want you to try and use your creative and critical thinking because the landscape may actually look a little more like this. It's not obvious, it's not overt, it's not fully blossoming, but things are happening. There is industry growth and there are new opportunities. They're not going to be explicit. They're not going to be jumping out in front of you like a big red flower on this image, right? They're going to be a little bit hidden or just slowly growing. And you're going to have to think and look and be mindful of what is possible, what could be out there. There is demand within industry sector for global competitiveness. Now, what am I saying here? What I'm saying is if we just divide the career pathways for the moment into an academic pathway and an industry pathway, so a non-academic pathway. If we're looking at this industry non-academic pathway, what we're talking about are jobs in public sector, jobs in private sector, jobs in startup companies and non-for-profit. They're four key examples, four key sectors within the industry pathway. Now within industry, given the current climate and given COVID-19, there is a strong demand within industry to gain global competitiveness because everything has gone online. There is so much business that has transitioned online or is still in the process of transitioning online, and they're trying to get a better share of the market. Now, in order to do that, there is now heightened interest from industry in data, in forecasting, in analysis of outputs, in high-level problem solving. Now, you don't have to be a STEM graduate to be able to have these skills. Most of you across all the HDR areas or disciplines will have skills in data and analysis and realistically forecasting if you think about the way that you've approached your research. You are skilled in high-level problem solving. So what's interesting to me is that industry have started to recognise the value of understanding data. Now, it doesn't mean that industry are advertising for PhD and MPhil graduates, okay? Industry are still not quite sure of what you represent and what you offer, okay? They know that some of the skills you offer are valuable, but it's really going to be up to you to be able to sell yourself and promote the skills that you offer, okay? So for me, the glass is half full, not half empty. And COVID has actually highlighted that because COVID has brought us to a position where I guess the world, and particularly Australia, are taking note of the value of research or experts. Okay, so for me, there are opportunities here. But the key point that I want to make is that the value you offer needs to be articulated. Okay, the skills you offer industry, the industry sector, needs to be articulated or communicated by you. And the only way to do that is for you to really take a deep dive into yourself and pay attention and notice what skills you actually offer. Now, some of you are really good at this and some of you are not as good at this. And again, that's okay. Sometimes we need others to shine the light on what it is we're really good at, okay? So I'm going to utilize this opportunity, given we have a few more. Okay, we have about 25, 26 of you online at the moment. I'm going to utilize your skills and ask you again to reutilize the chat function and share with the group what skills do you offer industry as a graduate researcher. Now, if you're not sure for yourself, think of a colleague, think of someone else, think of research graduates in total. But I want you as a cohort with me today to swamp this chat function with industry type skills that you believe you offer given your experience in candidature. What is it that you offer in terms of your skills? I'm going to give you a few minutes to just go crazy in the chat. Thank you for kicking it off, Michael. That's awesome. Teamwork skills. Absolutely. That's completely part of your research. Communication skills. Yes, so communicating difficult concepts into simple ways. Jasmine, that is huge. That is a core part of working in industry, because industry don't want the jargon. They don't understand the jargon. They need to be able to make it user-friendly for, well, not just for the people you're working with, but for the boards, for the audience, for the end user experience. So yes, communicating difficult concepts, complex concepts into user-friendly ways. Independent work and taking initiative. Now that, Kelsey, is critical in the current climate, especially given some of your roles as you graduate might actually be remote-based roles. You may not be traveling to other states or countries to do your work. Identifying and synthesizing complex information. Thank you, Zoe. Exactly. So many of our businesses out there don't know how to identify the key information that's required. They then don't even know how to synthesize that information because it is so complex. They don't understand how to work with the data. And oh my gosh, how much would they benefit from having someone who could do that? Problem solving, yes. Communicating to a broad range of knowledge bases and communicating impact of research. Yes, beautiful. Hard work and teamwork. Yes, that's a really good point. Good with data and working on your own. Not always good at taking initiative. That's all right. Everyone's different. Everyone has to share what they believe from their perspective. Project management, design and creative thinking, translation of qualitative analysis, transdisciplinary teamwork. Fantastic. Managing relationships. Yes, you guys have had to learn how to manage up. Some of you have managed or supported honours students, so managing down. Some of you have had to manage sideways in terms of your peers, in terms of getting access to labs or all of those kinds of things. Flexibility in different challenges and situations. Yeah, that's really important. So flexibility and adaptability. Resilience, yes, and that is definitely worth speaking to in any of your applications or connections with people. You know, your ability to have adapted in the middle of your thesis whilst approaching a pandemic or navigating a pandemic is huge, and how you went about that will be critical for you to articulate. Thinking in different ways to solve a problem, create or innovate, lovely. Your writing skills, yes. Researching, ability to find and quickly understand and synthesize information. Woohoo! Okay, this is wonderful. This is really wonderful. Now, if you look at all of these comments in the chat function, these are the types of things that you need to speak about in terms of yourself. Okay, and this is across a range of mediums. So when you're speaking to people within your network, these are the kinds of ways to speak about the experiences that you have or the skills that you have. Okay, in terms of job applications, these are the ways to speak about it, that, you know, you weren't just a, you know, a PhD or an MPhil student for the past 3 to 5 years, and you've stepped out with you know, specific skilled advanced knowledge in one particular discipline. You guys have walked out as project managers. Yeah, you have managed a project for 3 to 5 years. Yeah, navigating the COVID pandemic where research has to pause at times, adapt, pivot and change. You've had to manage up, manage down, manage sideways. You've had to manage budgets or lack of budget and therefore apply for grants or seek other opportunities to leverage off other people's work or other people's resources. Like, all of these are critical skills, and everything you have listed there are most likely the selection criteria for the jobs you will apply for. So you're ticking most of the boxes. The key is that if you highlight this, industry will open their eyes and be interested, right? And then you can communicate the fact that you actually are qualified, extra qualified in this space as well. If, however, you apply for jobs or connect with colleagues with just your PhD or MPhil hat on, and you're just promoting the fact that you have one of those qualifications, it won't always mean something to the industry sector because, again, they just don't understand yet. So it's less about the qualification and more about what you offer as a result of your qualification. Okay, both of them hand in hand are really important. And as industry begins to give people like yourselves more opportunities, you then begin to educate industry about the value of HDR qualifications, right? So you are part of shaping the future. But in addition to that, you are part of learning and sharing what it is that you personally offer, and industry will then start to see, oh, okay, Zoe has skills in data analysis. That could actually be useful to us. And particularly if Zoe can present, hey guys, here are some ways that I can add value because I also have this additional skill set. That can be really valuable. And that is how, I guess, the employment sector works. You know, job descriptions will advertise that these are the skills that they're looking for. And if you read into those and can see that this position says that, you know, there's an interest in gathering data, but that's about all they talk about. But you can see that the position would really value or benefit from someone who can really analyse data, identify whether the data that's being collected is even valid or reliable. All of those kinds of things, you can speak to those and grab the interest of industry. Okay. Anyway, hopefully I'm preaching to the converted and you already can identify the skills and value that you offer. So if that's the case, then what are my top 5 tips? Okay, and we've already touched on a couple of little things here, but let's have a look at what the top 5 tips are. Number 1, I will say to you, be COVID wise. Okay. And I'm going to explain each of these tips in a lot more detail, but be COVID wise in the sense of seeing the glass half full rather than half empty. And I'll explain what I mean. Number 2, be strengths focused. So focus less on what you can't do or what boxes you don't tick in terms of the jobs you're applying for or the things that you're seeing out there in industry, and think more about what it is that you offer. Be network savvy is number 3. So don't just connect with people for the sake of having, you know, big numbers on your LinkedIn or on your list, but be thinking about who do I need to get to know and connect with in order to broaden my opportunities. And that's not to be offered a job, but rather to meet people who might have more information about the career pathway you're interested in, or the types of jobs you're interested in, or the industry sector you're interested in working in, or just interested in learning about. Okay, so utilize your network to your advantage. Be profile ready. So that's where I always say to HDR students, make sure in particular your LinkedIn profile is ready, because there's no point meeting people and connecting with people and then they can't find you. Or if they go to find you, there's not much information about you. Okay. That doesn't self-promote you. And number 5, and very important, is be industry active. And that's around what are the opportunities to connect or engage with industry during candidature to leverage your opportunities, either through the connections that you would have with industry or just through the experiences you gain. All right. So they're my top 5 tips. So let's start with number 1. Be COVID wise. Firstly, don't get distracted by the bad news, okay? Media sells if there's bad news, all right? But the last thing you want to do is focus on it, become deflated or anxious or stressed about it. That's not going to help you, all right? So you know that the news is going to come through, that borders are closing or there's job cuts or there's this, that and the other. Just let that information go by. We know we're going to be bombarded by it constantly. It's not new news, and start focusing on the things that matter. The wording unprecedented, which gets thrown around a lot, you know, that this pandemic is an unprecedented times. I actually think that could be good news, okay? This is the first time I, in my career or in my adult years, have seen a Prime Minister stand side by side with a health expert, a chief medical officer, in front of the public on TV regularly, where a Prime Minister or the health team are constantly referring to their data team, their research team, their people, their experts. Those people they're referring to are you. You know, they're you. They're everyday HDR graduates. I am hoping that provide that evidence, that data, that information, so that good decisions can be made. All right. That leads me to number 3 here. Remember that pandemics are not exclusively public health matters, okay? And you will see that the economy has been impacted by COVID-19, not just the nation's health or the world's health. It has impacted so many other elements of how an economy runs, and that provides the insight for you to know that just because you don't work in the health sector, just because you don't work on vaccinations or whatever it is to do with COVID, that doesn't mean that your skills aren't valued, because our finances have been impacted, businesses have been impacted, businesses are having to move online and don't have all those skills. Businesses are trying to be more competitive globally and don't have all of those skills or people with those skills. So it is broader, which tells me there are actually more opportunities, but again, they're not going to be blasted everywhere. You're going to have to be creative and think your way through where the opportunities will present themselves. And lastly, that's why you need to use those critical and creative thinking skills, okay? So like I had in that previous slide of the beautiful forest with a little path carved through, you are going to notice little opportunities like that, which will eventually flourish. Don't be put off by little opportunities. Don't feel like, you know, one little opportunity over here, which might be quite different to the research that you have done or the full skill set that you have. Don't think that that is, you know, a wasteful opportunity. If you feel that you are developing your research skills or utilising some of your research skills, it's better to take a step forward and be exposed and learn a little more about the sector. Even if it's different to the sector that you want, you're still expanding your knowledge, your worldliness, your understanding of industry, which you don't really get within a university setup. Okay, so sometimes any opportunity that is heading in a similar direction, that is utilising some of your skills, are still valuable than waiting and looking for the one ideal opportunity. Okay, so tip number 1, be COVID wise. Are there any questions in terms of COVID wise? Again, feel free to pop them in the chat. And even if you don't think about it now, if it's in a few minutes' time or half an hour, not a problem. All right, tip number 2, be strengths focused. What am I talking about here? Know your personal strengths. And I will guarantee that more than 50% of you on this call today will not be able to identify your top 5 strengths really quickly for me. And you need to be able to. As a final year, you need to know that your top 5 personal strengths are boom, 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 boom. Yeah? And you're only going to know that by self-assessing yourself and having a good understanding of who you are and what you offer. Second part, know the skills that are needed for the kind of industry that you're interested in or the kind of pathway that you're interested in. Know the skills that you have and know your skill gaps. and how easily to do that, don't go searching. We've got it here for you. Utilise our wheel that has all of the skills listed there to have a bit of an idea of where your skills gaps are. That's a step one, and the link is there on the slide for you. In addition to that, you can go searching for the types of jobs that you're interested in, or the type of pathway you're interested in, even if it's as broad as, I have research skills, Georgia, and I don't quite know what kind of jobs, then just jump on and search research skills, research in the search function for, let's say, even seek.com, and just start to have a look in each job of what skills are they asking for, because honestly, when you have a look at it, many of the jobs requiring research skills ask for the same types of skills and selection criteria. They're typically asking for your general data, so your technical type skills, and you'd need to read through that to see whether that matches the skills you have. But then in addition to that, they're all typically asking for teamwork skills, your ability to communicate difficult concepts into user-friendly communication. They're asking for initiative and autonomy. They're often asking for ability to work remotely, which often ties into that initiative and autonomy. So there's key skills that you would have regardless of the type of jobs you're looking for. Kelsey and Michael are saying there are some audio issues. Okay, let me turn that up. Let me just double check. If anyone else, okay, a few of you are having audio issues. Okay, can I just double check if I hold my microphone here? Can you all hear that clearly? Testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay, seems to be working okay. The mic was cutting in and out. Okay, I'm going to hold it here just in case. My mic is on its way out. Thank you for that feedback. Okay, lovely, thank you. All right, and the third point for being strengths focused is then know how to articulate your value. And I'm really pleased with what you've already posted in the chat function in terms of the skills you believe you offer as a graduate, because that tells me that you have a good idea of what it is that you offer and you're beginning to articulate it. So that's excellent. Now, when you articulate that in terms of your job applications and communicating with others, you want to put on the employer or the contact person, whoever you're chatting with, you want to put on their hat and think about the type of language that they're used to hearing or that they're working with, okay, in terms of articulating what you offer. So it's all well and good for us to know what we offer and be able to share that, but it's about the end user. Who are you speaking to? Who is your target audience? And how are you communicating that? Okay. Tip number 3, be network savvy. That's all right. Ola's just popped in just to check if everything's clear. I think so. You yell out to me again. Yeah, I've held it up. Okay. All right. It sounds like everyone can hear me now, so I'll keep going. But again, if it does cut out again, can you anyone just pop in the chat that that's a problem, and I'll try and fix it. Thanks, guys. Okay, so be network savvy. What do I mean by that? Primarily know your purpose. Okay, so if you're going to do networking as a purposeful task, or you're just generally meeting with people and utilising that as your networking approach, which is a great approach as well, know why you're doing it. Many people avoid the process of networking because they feel uncomfortable, they feel scared, they don't know what to do, they feel like an imposter. All of those things come up when networking. So in my networking webinar that I ran earlier in the year, I spoke a lot about the fact of the importance of knowing your purpose. And generally your purpose comes down to 2 things. It comes down to learning. So your purpose is to learn from other people. And if your purpose is to learn, then what are the questions that you want to ask that will help you to learn? Okay. Or your purpose might be to share. And therefore, what is it that you're wanting to share? So if, for instance, you're presenting at a conference, whether that's face-to-face or online, then generally your purpose for networking is to share, right? You're sharing yourself and your research via your presentation. But you might also be attending other people's presentations and learning from them. And therefore there might be some great questions that you could ask. So just by knowing your purpose, it can create a sense of calm. And I'll once I've gone through these 5, I'll jump back into some of the resources that I have in terms of these areas for career development and show you where the resources sit so that you can go and source that whenever you like. The second part is to maximise online opportunities. Now, again and again, students are saying to me, Georgia, there's no way to do any networking anymore because there's no face-to-face opportunities. Now, guys, that's the glass half empty. Now, if we turn that upside down and see the glass half full, what you will recognise is that many of the international conferences have become online conferences. Now, there's not as many, granted, but those that are still running are providing the online or are simply online in total. Now, the benefit of that for you, if we're thinking about the glass being half full, is that you actually have access to it. You know, if it was pre-COVID and there were face-to-face conferences, perhaps you didn't have the money or the grant to travel to those conferences and therefore did not have access. So COVID does present us with the opportunity, potentially, to connect with a wider variety of people, to learn more, because things are online. So make the most of that and utilise your networking skills in those environments. So, you know, let's say you attend an online conference, and in that conference, in one of the presentations, they bring people out to breakout rooms to share their learnings or insights. Do share your learnings, connect with people, have a look at the names at the bottom, and then eventually if you thought that their comment was really valuable or insightful, or you want to know more, which is the learn model of networking, write those down, write the person's name down, connect with them on LinkedIn, follow up that conversation. Okay, so there are ways to maximise those opportunities. And I had a webinar with 35 supervisors last week on this exact topic. And many of them said that they have some ideas for their students about how to network or who they can network with in online settings. So make sure you have conversations with your supervisors if they're open to those types of conversations to support you. What else can you do in terms of networking? You might want to conduct informational interviews. Okay, now what is an informational interview? Again, I'm going to show you where the resource with a lot of detail that can support you. But very simply, an informational interview is an informal interview with someone or conversation with someone that you're wanting to learn from. Okay, so let's say, I think you put earlier, the reason that you're attending today is because you have no idea what pathway you want to go. Well, maybe you have a couple of ideas of what opportunities might be of interest or what pathways might be of interest. Well, the idea then of an informational interview is to see, do you have a connection with anyone in that pathway? Does your supervisor know someone who works in industry in that pathway? Or does your supervisor know someone who works in that pathway? Now, it's highly likely, like the degrees of separation are not, I think it used to be 6 degrees of separation. I think it's now like 3 degrees of separation because of our online presence. So ask the questions. And then if you can find someone who you might want to interview or have a conversation with, then conducting an informational interview can be really useful. And all it is you spending 15 to 20 minutes, most likely via Zoom or Teams, asking the person some questions for you to learn more about the pathway, the industry, their role, future trends. Like, there are so many questions that you can ask, but the only question you are not asking is, can I get a job? Or are there any jobs? Okay, because the idea of networking is to build meaningful relationships so that they think highly of you should an opportunity arise, or they help link you to someone else who might be in a different pathway but might be of interest to you. Okay, people are very happy to share some time with graduating students, and particularly if there's the chance for them to talk about themselves. Okay, so maximise that opportunity. Now, with my previous career hat on, so I was previously in the world of sports psychology as a psychologist, I would receive a minimum of 7 inquiries a week from master's students asking to have an online conversation or a short interview just to learn about what does it look like to be a sports psychologist. Did that bother me receiving that many emails? No, it shows me students are interested, they've tracked me down, they've looked up my profile, and they're keen to learn. So those who put in that bit of effort, I would connect with them for 15 minutes and they had some great questions. I learned a little bit about self-reflection of thinking about what was my career journey. They learned about my career journey and some tips and tricks that I had in terms of moving into the industry. So don't feel like you're imposing on people. This is just part of the journey of networking and getting to know people. And the fourth part of networking and being savvy is just about building trust. It's all about meaningful relationships, not just about collecting numbers and names in order to say you have 500 connections. It's about utilising it to your advantage and for a meaningful purpose. Now, again, I will go through each of those steps. Or actually, maybe I'll do that now. No, let me do that now because I've spoken to it a couple of times. All right, so let me just jump you. I'm going to do a screen share and flick across, which means you should now be able to see this page of mine. All right, so if I was in your shoes, this is the type of direction I would be going to find things in terms of networking and any other career resources that might be of value to me. So typically this is the way I go. It might suit you, it may not. And remember, I'm currently in digital workplace, whereas you're best positioned entering via HiQ through your student portal, just in terms of accessing everything. So I would go to my communities. I would then go to research students. Under research students, I would find the 5 key areas that are relevant to me as a research student. And because I'm wanting to develop my research or career skills, I'm developing my career skills, this is where I would click. And this is primarily the core page of GRED. So it provides all of the information of everything that we have in terms of GRED offerings. Thank you, Kelsey and Jasmine, about my microphone. I did accidentally drop it, so I've picked it up again. All right, so if you're looking for things related to career development, here's our Develop Research and Career Skills page. On the right here, you'll see we have the HDR Learning Resources Blackboard. This is our home of all of our resources and will be really important to you as a research student, because then what you'll find is down this left-hand column are those 20 skills that we talked about in terms of the top 20 skills for HDR graduate researchers. And if you see down under the lead section, leading your career development, if I click on there, we have a range of resources. And this is an event that I'm presenting today. It's a webinar and event. And these are all of the webinars here and all of the resources linked to the webinars that I provide. So today, obviously, there'll be some more information under Propel Your Career, but I've spoken about a couple of other things. So in terms of networking, here under Grow Your Network, if you haven't attended the webinar, and there won't be another one for a few months, you may want to go in and watch the recording and or read some of the resources. And I've gathered some really core, I've tried not to not overdo it for you and have too much information, death by content. But there's some really important information here about networking. There's also information about LinkedIn profile, so building your profile, which is the next slide that I will talk to. So at least you can see that it all sits in here in growing your network. And there's even a position here, I even put in this advertised position, which is a talent acquisition research specialist, which means that an organisation was advertising to have a talent acquisition research specialist, and one of their primary jobs was to utilise some algorithms and conduct some scanning of potential candidates via LinkedIn profiles. That's what that role was about. So when people say to me, oh, Georgia, you talk too much about LinkedIn profiles, I will tell you that organisations are appointing people to go searching via LinkedIn profiles to see who is available for work and headhunting people who have the core skill sets that they're looking for. So there's growing your network. The third point we had on the slide was around conducting informational interviews. So you'll see here that I have, I think it's a 6-page guide on conducting informational interviews, how to do it, why you would do it, when to do it, what types of questions you could ask, how to follow up from an informational interview and leverage it for your career. Okay, and again, it's a process. It's getting to know people, getting to know more information about the pathway, the industry, the role you're interested in, which then sharpens the questions that you ask the next person and the next person and the next person. And all of those people become your broader network in industry that help keep, I guess, their eyes on the ground for any small opportunities that might come up, knowing that small opportunities often turn into big opportunities down the track. Okay, so someone, I can't remember who it was, but someone earlier mentioned uncertainty around which pathway should I take. If you're interested, if you're interested in a academic career, I did run a webinar on navigating an academic career, and again there's a recording and resources to do with that. And then just recently I ran one on careers beyond academia, a world of possibilities. So in here I talk about what does a career outside of academia look like, how do I navigate that, how do I get into that, but the wonderful thing with that webinar is we had 3 alumni, graduate researchers who only graduated in the last 12, 18 months, who jumped on and provided their insights about their learnings and their journeys in terms of building their career outside academia. So do jump on and watch that or watch it again. And as I indicated, there are resources, there are some articles that are of great value and some case studies that just might really help support you. Okay, so that provides a little bit of insight as to what is available. And at the end of this session, I will send you an email and I'll send you these direct links so that you can easily access them. But I wanted you to be able to see what I see. All right, let me jump back to the slide. All right, so that was number 3, building trust. Number 4 is be profile ready. Okay, what does that mean? Make sure you optimize your LinkedIn profile. This sounds so redundant, but update your photo. You know, if you took a photo of yourself and you put it on LinkedIn at the start of candidature and now you're at the end, it might be time to update it. If you have a photo in there of you in a t-shirt, of you in a bikini, of you in casual clothes, it doesn't send the right message, given that LinkedIn is about professional communication and connection. Now, why LinkedIn? Because honestly, there are over, I think it's 600 million users on LinkedIn. It is a ridiculous number of people that utilise LinkedIn. And now the industry are aware of that, they're utilising that from a talent acquisition and recruitment purpose. So it's important that you have yours up to date. Update your headline and your summary. Okay, I have seen too many PhD students have their headline as PhD candidate. Okay, now again, I'm going to jump.
Georgia, can you say it again? We're still having the problem with your mic.
Oh, really? Hang on, Okay, how's that?
It's better.
I'm even going to turn it up loud and you're just going to have to see my hand, but that's okay. All right, so if you didn't hear that, I do see time and time again that students will have a headline in their LinkedIn profile that says PhD candidate, and that's it. That is not going to attract recruiters. It does not tell the audience who looks at your profile, what it is you're about and what you offer. Okay. Now, yes, Amali, and I've just seen here, Amali's just popped in there. Can you please tell me again how you went to the information interview details? Yes. So what I'll do is at the end of this webinar, I'll send you a direct link to the information interview details so that you guys can see directly how to get there. I'll make it just much easier, but at least you can see that there are resources there. Not a problem at all. Okay, so I'm going to jump back into, okay, here we go. I'm going to jump into LinkedIn and actually show you live just as an example so that you can see what I'm talking about. All right, so I've got my profile photo. I have a background photo which highlights for me around that idea of navigating a landscape or thinking about landscape. For me, that works. As a female with a maiden name, I have popped my maiden name in there in case people down the track or people from my past are trying to connect with me. That's a great thing that LinkedIn have put in there. And then you'll see here that my headline is not just one thing. I'm not just the HDR careers educator because I offer more than that. My experience and career background provides a broader story. Okay, so hence I highlight that in terms of my story. I then provide an about section. Now in the about section, I have seen many students just write that I'm a PhD student looking for work, or I'm a PhD graduate with skills in this particular research area, looking for research in this particular research area. It doesn't provide you with the breadth and the opportunity for what it is you offer. So think creatively. As you can see here, I've had to think creatively. I'm an Olympic sports psychologist who is working in HDR careers education. How the heck did I get into this space? Well, for me, there are a range of things. You are all high performers. HDR students and Olympic athletes are high performing people. They're mostly targeted on a 3 to 4 year campaign or candidature. They're mostly focused on one person who is generally the source of truth, which is for athletes, a coach, for you guys, your supervisor. It is similar, okay? And it's about how do you prepare yourself in terms of your career, but sustain well-being in the process and broaden your thinking about what it is you offer. So that's how I've written the summary that I've chosen to write. Okay, so these are just some things to think about. How can you maximize your LinkedIn profile? And again, I've got resources on that, which I will connect you with. So be profile ready, update your headline and your summary, and update your work history. Okay, not many people update their work history correctly. So make sure your work history is updated, and that might include, rather than you just having your education highlighted in terms of a PhD or an MPhil, you might include that as part of your work history as well. And I spoke about that in the job applications webinar, that you might want to have it under work history that you have been a researcher, and then in brackets put PhD or MPhil, just so again it highlights to people, oh, you're a researcher, you've been researching something for 4 years, and what is it that you've achieved through doing that research? Thank you, Michael has also highlighted, yeah, good point. Update your education history if you do any online courses. That's a really good point. Thanks for sharing that one. And look, if you guys have any other things that maybe I miss along the way, please do add it to the chat, because I think we can all benefit from supporting each other. Okay, so that's about being profile ready. The last tip is around being industry active. Okay, so what does that mean? That means taking the opportunity of internships if they're available. Okay, now at the moment, most of the internships here at QUT are self-sourced, which means you go out and source them yourself, and we provide the logistics, the plan, the documentation, the systems to support you to make it happen. Why is that the case? Because not as many industry sector is not advertising internships at the moment, and it's just because the government has a new system that they're putting in place, so there's nothing really advertised at the moment. However, if you get good at networking, you build some informational interviewing and you start to get to know what's going on in the pathway that you're interested in or the industry sector you're interested in, there's no reason why you can't self-source an internship yourself with the backup support of us from the administrative perspective. Okay, so there are opportunities. I'm going to show you again where to find information about this. We also run, and this is, many of you would have known Katie or Catherine Theobald. Well, Katie's gone on maternity leave, which is lovely. And Susan Schlinker is our new HDR Partnerships Officer. Susan will be leading this entire area, so she will be guiding the design sprints this year. Now, a design sprint happens in November. The purpose of a design sprint is that what we wanted to do is provide you as HDR students the opportunity to work in a transdisciplinary team. So there's usually about 6 or 7 HDR students across a range of disciplines that come together as a group. And then we engage someone from industry sector. Last year, it was the Office of the Queensland Chief Scientist. We engaged them to come in and talk about a significant problem that they wanted to solve. Now, what happens in a design sprint, we based it on the Google Design Sprint methodology. And the idea of a design sprint is to bring together a team of like-minded professionals across a range of disciplines to try and bring their heads together as a brains trust and solve a problem within a short window of time, which is usually a 7 to 10 day turnaround. So this one will run again in November. Last time it, can I say, sold out. We quickly filled all of the positions. I think last year we took about 50, so about 5 or 6, maybe 6 groups of 7, and one industry partner. The industry partner will share what their problem is, what they're trying to resolve, and then as a group you get together and identify what you think the problem is, what some solutions could be, what are some questions that need to be further asked, and then be able to present back to the industry partner as a group with potentially a spokesperson what the solution is that you're proposing. Now, what's the benefit of that? 1, you get the experience of working in a team. 2, you get the experience of working on a legitimate design sprint, which looks great on the resume. 3, you get to liaise with and learn about industry and how solving problems through a design sprint can be effective, but also challenging. 4, we had a couple of students go, oh my gosh, I never want to work on a design sprint again. That is not for me. That's great. That's great. It gives perspective and you learn what works for you and what doesn't. So design sprints can be really valuable in terms of your resume, gaining extra experience, and either crossing off or ticking the type of things that you like or don't like. Okay. In terms of being industry active, I would also, oh, hang on, sorry about this, Georgie. If we participated in a design sprint, where should we add it to our LinkedIn or CV? Oh, good question, George, thanks. In terms of participating in a design sprint, I would be adding it to both your LinkedIn profile and your CV. Pretty much everything that's on your LinkedIn profile will most likely be on your CV. Your LinkedIn profile is like your living CV and highlights the key areas that might attract external interest. Now, a design sprint, I would say, would attract external interest. So I would be putting it in both, and I would have it under your work history, not under your educational history. So not sitting under your candidature, because you want it to stand out. And these are the kinds of things to be thinking about as a graduate. What are the experiences that I've had that potential industry partners or employers might know a little bit about? Okay, and design sprints are one of those things they might know about. It might be a keyword search for recruiters. That's worth popping in there. Internship may be similar. McDonald's might be similar. And I raise this because I did have a student a couple of years ago provide me with their CV, and their work history wasn't very long. It only had two work opportunities that they had, and they were a fair bit older. So I asked them, well, what did you do before that? And they said, oh, I only worked for McDonald's for 10 years. Now, I can understand because with their McDonald's worker hat on as a teenager and young adult, they saw that as just flipping burgers, you know. But when they really thought about the skills they developed, and one of them primarily being the ability to follow systems and processes, which is really important in industry, they realised that there were actually some really good skills and experiences that they could use as bullet points to highlight their experience. So not only did they learn about the skills that they could add to their CV, but also the name or the brand of McDonald's is quite important. People know it, it's a global brand. So why wouldn't you want to have that in your CV or your LinkedIn profile? I think it's useful. You obviously wouldn't want to have it at the top, but I think it's definitely worth having in there. I had another student from memory who spoke about, had done a small research project. It was a 2-week project for Facebook. And they didn't have it in their CV. And their reason being, well, it was only a 2-week project and I didn't get paid. Oh my gosh, your resume and your CV, there are no rules that say you can only put paid work in there. There's no rules that say you can't put volunteer work in there. There are no rules that say you must have worked for that organisation for more than 3 months to put it in your CV or your LinkedIn profile. There are no rules. You make up the rules. So what I would say to you is, even if you've only worked on a small project or through your research project, maybe you've worked with industry for a small component of it, which you could pull out and highlight, then I would be highlighting it. And I would speak to the organisation that you, I would highlight the organisation that you're working with. And Adira has raised that point, you know, can we mention the organisation's name for a design sprint? Absolutely. Each industry partner agrees to be promoted through the processes that we engage in. So yes, you can. And yes, again, I think that's a great point, Nadira. So thanks for raising that. So, and I'm going to show you where you can find these, but I'm just going to, should I? No, actually, I'll take you there now before I go into industry research. Okay, so let me show you where you can find anything to do with engaging with industry. I'm mindful some of you already know that, which is fine. So if I take you back, and I'm going to go right back to the start, so back to my digital workplace page, which might be your HiQ page. I'll go back into my communities, and I'm a research student. And here is the new button that Katie Theobald and Susan Schlenker have put together that helps you engage with industry throughout candidature. And they have beautifully highlighted here in the navigation bar each of the opportunities that are available to you. Okay, so this is like your Bible, your homepage for being industry active. This is your starting point. There is information here about what is industry engagement, like what does it mean and how do I get involved? Now, the most important that Katie and Susan will highlight to you is here, this button called Submit Your Registration. And all that is doing is like an email distribution list, in a sense, it is adding you to a registration list that highlights to them that you are interested in things to do with industry engagement. Now, why are they doing that? Because not only will we promote things on this web page and promote them via our e-newsletter, there are also sometimes there are opportunities that industry, you know, ring and say, you know, we want someone to start at the end of the week. Do you have anyone with this kind of specialisation? And Katie and Susan will go to the list of those registered and look at that list first and contact you first before advertising it, just because there's a short turnaround, and that's just the reality. Okay, so really recommend that you submit your registration. And again, I can send that link to you, but that's sitting there for you. Wonder if, oh, hang on, let me just try. There you go. I think that worked. I just added the link to the chat function. Hopefully that worked. Yes, okay, great. All right, so yes, so there's information about internships, as I mentioned before, and how to source internships. Just a bit slow to load. There's also, so sourcing and securing an internship. There's information about the design sprints that I mentioned before. You know, what are they and what's a wicked problem that industry find a challenge, and how can this 1 week intensive support you? Okay, and it is 1 week intensive, so you need to be able to pause candidature for most likely about 10 days to be able to focus on this, or I guess do candidature after hours, but it is intense and you need to be available for the team, and hence we've put it in the November window. We also have immersion placements, so that's just the opportunity. Think a little bit like work experience when you're in high school, just that opportunity to step into industry and see what is like in the day of someone, you know, in the pathway that you're interested in. And this might be, you know, if we're talking about layering the opportunities you have, this might be that you do a bit of networking, you find someone who's interested in the pathway that you're interested in or in a role, you connect with them on LinkedIn, you follow them a few times and make a few comments. So you're starting just to build a little bit of awareness and knowledge. You contact them about an informational interview because you've got some questions, or you've noticed something that they've posted in LinkedIn that you thought was really interesting. You'd like to know a little bit more about it. So you organise an informational interview. Maybe you then organise a second informational interview to learn a little bit more and build that connection. And then perhaps you ask to do an immersion placement. So you might follow them for a day or a week, or 1 day a week for 2 months. Or it could be a range of things that you might do. You might assist them with something. But there's some examples here about, you know, shadowing a CEO. Like, do I want to be a CEO down the track or not? Exploring roles in startup companies. Shadowing your mentor. If along the way you've had a mentor, but you wonder, what do they actually do every day? Is there the opportunity to shadow them? So it's typically around that role of shadowing. Just seeing here, in case there are any, so Michael's just popped, in case there are any other maths students here, MISG is an example of a design sprint. Okay, now, Michael, I don't know what MISG stands for. Hopefully the maths students do, but do you mind just popping in what that stands for so that we can all learn? That would be awesome. Maths in Industry Study Group. Awesome, thank you. And look, that's another way to do part of your networking. Who within your professional field is involved in networking events, or are there any professional bodies linked to your area of interest that you can connect with, which again have networking or experience-based opportunities? Questions come through. Can I describe what shadowing is in practice? Yeah, sure. So if you're shadowing a CEO, you're typically following them like a shadow for the day, unless they've got confidential type of conversations that you can't follow them. Now, I know it's a little tricky in the current climate being in an online environment, much harder. So it might be waiting until there are face-to-face opportunities, or perhaps there literally are face-to-face opportunities where you can go into their workplace and literally follow them for a day and ask questions. Or maybe it's even, you know, maybe you'd like to be a director on a board, and maybe there's the opportunity for you to shadow a director by sitting in on a board meeting. Perhaps, I mean, you might have to sign a number of waivers, but maybe there are opportunities to sit on different types of meetings and then be able to chat with that particular person about what did they notice, what did they observe, what are the key concerns for them. So it really is about following and learning from people's typical, you know, the typical day in a life of an employee. So there's a lot of information here about what you could do, how you could secure it, what does it look like. And again, just think creatively, and if you're not sure, then send an email to Susan and she might be able to provide some additional ideas. We've got 3-minute thesis coming up very, 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 very soon. That's a really exciting space to gain experience. And many of you mentioned earlier around the value of being able to articulate complex concepts into more simple, user-friendly general audience communication. That's what 3-minute thesis is all about. So even if you aren't wanting to get into the competition from a competition perspective and wanting to progress, even to attend some of the learning and development related to it can be really useful. And I think it's next week I'm delivering one of the training sessions on effectively communicating your research. So that might be of interest to you. Yeah, so your church has just posted, do you know how many people accept offers to shadow? It feels like an imposition. Yeah, look, it can be an imposition to some people. It depends on the type of role that you're looking for. You know, if you're looking to shadow a principal researcher or a researcher who's in industry, they might be happy for you to follow them for even a couple of hours just to see what it is you do. I'd probably say it is a 50-50. Some people will say no to being shadowed. Others are comfortable with it or might propose another idea or might invite you into a brainstorming meeting that they have to do with their research. So it's really about putting it out there and asking, would there be any opportunities to see your work you know, in real life, to shadow you, to shadow something that you do. For me, when I'm asked to be shadowed, I'm very happy for people to sit in on the webinar, to sit in on my preparation for preparing a webinar, deliver the webinar, the post-event activities and admin that we have to do. I'll share my debrief about what I think went well, what I think I'd like to improve on. So they're the kinds of things that I would share with someone who wanted to shadow me. I probably wouldn't take you to a one-on-one consultation with a student because that may not be appropriate. So it's just, you know, don't say no to yourself. Let someone else say no to you. So open the door and ask the questions and see if there is an opportunity. So 3 minutes thesis, visualize your thesis. There's mentoring opportunities. I'm not going to click through everything, but just to give you a bit of an idea. You know, in the STEM space, obviously there are quite a few things set up in that STEM space, but there are also, there's also the QUT Career Mentor Program. That has kicked off. I'm not sure if that's closed yet, that scheme, but that for those of you who are not in the STEM areas, these are the kinds of things, you know, if you're in education or you're in business, or you're wanting to, or creative industries and you're wanting to just connect with people in the industry. They may not have a research background, but that's okay because you've got the research background and the research lens, but just connecting with people in industry to learn more about industry and maybe give some guidance because they're in more senior type of roles. Why not? I think it's a fantastic idea. So that's mentoring, and then networking also. We've got an RSS feed that you might want to be aware of. So anything that is to do with networking that happens within the university or subset organisations connected to the university gets fed through here so that you can see what might be of value to you as an HTR student. And again, think broadly, you know, so if you're in creative industries, don't just look for networking opportunities that explicitly state creative industries or something to do with arts industry, etc. You know, be creative and think, well, where does the creative industries play a role in the space of ecosystem change and population health? Maybe there are ways. Maybe there is a different lens that you provide that could add value to that. Or perhaps, you know, perhaps you're in education and, you know, maybe there's an opportunity within Sustainability and Science Showcase to learn more about that showcase in that space because education can be delivered across lots of different sectors and maybe the area that you're skilled in can add value to the educational development, the training and development of people within a range of other sectors. So be open and mindful. QUT entrepreneurship, that can open your mind to lots of different opportunities that might be available to you across any discipline. You don't have to be one specific discipline for that. And then we've obviously got all the 3MT presentations. So there are lots of opportunities. I just wanted to highlight to you that there are a lot of opportunities, and it's just working out what is going to be best for you and just slowly making your way through. It's not a race. It's a step-by-step process. Michael highlights here, he's seen a lot of job listings for jobs in teaching science to the public, so education students would still be relevant. Yes, Michael, that is exactly the point. And that is really key, that many of you, and not just education students, I know education is a little trickier because it's not as explicitly stated how your HDR skills can add value, right? But what you need to keep thinking is across all sectors, education and training is a key part. And just because you're not in STEM or not in science doesn't mean that you can't learn some of the skills required to provide education. And it may not be that you're delivering the content, it might be that your understanding and lens and perspective on systems and processes and educational learning adds value to organisations who are trying to upgrade their education systems. So just again, you've got to just think a little more creative and critical on what it is you have and offer, and where that could be placed best, or where that could open doors to opportunities. Okay, so really good point. So third and fourth point for being industry active is to do your industry research. If you are interested in a career in industry, then start thinking about what are the areas that you're interested in, start following organisations, follow them on LinkedIn, follow them on Facebook if they don't have a group on LinkedIn, a page on LinkedIn. See what are the key things that they're promoting and talking about. Then go in and see, well, who works in those different disciplines, areas, departments, and do they have the skills and experience that you would love to gain someday, and therefore start connecting with people. Reach out and ask if you can have an informational interview with them, or connect with them on LinkedIn just as a starting point. And I will say to you that if you do connect with people on LinkedIn, don't just press the connect button, add a personal note, okay? And I will say that for all of you as well. If I don't receive, I know I'm already connected with quite a few of you who are participating in this webinar today, but if the rest of you who are not connected with me on LinkedIn don't ask to connect with me, you're wasting a networking opportunity, because how do you know who I know? I would probably say I have 700 people in my network across a range of different areas. Well, you just never know who I might have a connection with, but I'm not going to connect with you if you just press that connect button because, maybe you saw me at a presentation. I'm going to connect with you because you tell me why I should connect with you, because you pop in the post, hey, Georgia, really valued your presentation today, or hey, Georgia, your presentation was interesting today, but I still have some questions, or I would still like to learn a bit more about this, or can you point me in the direction of this, or I'd love to stay connected because I liked your perspective on this. There are lots of different ways to show that there is a potential meaningful connection. Okay, and that's all about building relationships. So do your industry research and then do your job research. Start looking and seeing what is out there. And I know a few of you already attended my job applications webinar a few weeks ago, but I'm just going to show you again because I just think this is really important. I have a number of students say there are no jobs for PhD graduates. And if this is what you're doing, then this is why. Because if you're searching for the qualifications, remembering that at the start of this webinar, I said to you that industry are not quite aware of the value of HDR qualifications. So if you make the mistake of just searching under PhD, you're going to find 964 jobs, of which 50% of them are most likely postdoctoral or just PhD opportunities, not jobs. Okay, if however we go really broad, and I know this is too broad for most of you, but I can't narrow in because I don't know what each of your specializations are. But let's say we just simply type in the keyword search of research, then we move to 13,900 jobs. Okay, It is a significant difference. And you can see here that we have a range of different topics. Research and policy officer. Well, those of you who have done education in the education space, have you looked at policy in any of the research you've done or any of the connections you have with colleagues? Because this could be of value. This is research and policy is still in that education space, even if it's highlighted under consulting and strategy. Again, think broad. There's always research assistant positions advertised, obviously. Graduate research positions, research agronomist. That's stretching my language for today. Senior inspection and research officer, R&D research assistant, committee research officer. I mean, all these different titles. And you know, what's interesting is I went back and looked at a webinar that I ran back in 2019, and I did the same search under research. And I delivered that webinar twice in the year, so I know it's not, you know, the best evidence, but the total number of jobs that came up were 8,000 with just the keyword research on both occasions. I think it was 8,200 and then 8,800. Today I'm showing you 13,000, which tells me not so much maybe that there are more jobs, but more to the fact that industry is starting to grasp the concept of that word research and putting it in either their job titles or in their key summaries. So these are, again, key things for you to consider. What do I offer? What are my keywords? And how do I go searching for those keywords to see what is out there? Research and development engineer. Awesome. They're research officer for stem cells and cancer. Project officer. There you go. Education and training. These are all opportunities that can be hugely useful to you. Again, may not be in your specific area of research, but that's not what a graduate employment first step looks like. If you are lucky, if you are maybe the top 15, 20%, you may be able to step from your research area into a research role that is linked to that area. The majority of you will step into a research or a non-research specific role that is related to the skills you have built throughout candidature as your graduate transition job. That is not a lifetime job. Your first job is typically graduates stay in their first job between 2 to 4 years. That's it. And then they transition into the next role. So it's just a leverage. It's just a stepping stone that helps you build industry experience and more knowledge to go, oh, okay, no, actually, I don't want to work in this, or I want to work in this direction, or I need to upskill in this area, but you won't know until you step in. Okay, and I've seen it time and time again where graduates will step out and say, oh, gee, I'm not working in anything related to my PhD in terms of the content, but in terms of the skills, absolutely. And I didn't even realize that I had that many skills. All right, so back to my slides here. Okay, so as I mentioned, today's resources are going to be in under the Gred Blackboard. I will send direct links to you for each of those things. I've made some notes here as to the key things. But what I want to do is go back to some of the questions that you had at the start, the reasons for participating. A few of you mentioned around pathways. So I'm hoping now you're not going to know which pathway you want to take, but you may at least have a better understanding of academic versus industry pathway. You may understand that we have resources on building a career outside academia that you can go and utilise and learn more. You hopefully know that you can utilise informational interviewing to be able to expand your career paths, pathway knowledge and connections. A few of you asked around job searching. How do I go about job searching? I'm hoping I'm broadening your thinking a little more around keyword searches and where to look. But noting that the jobs you look for are only the advertised positions, and advertised positions are typically the more full-time type positions. And that only represents 50% of the jobs that are out there in the market. The other 50% are in what we call the hidden job market, and they are typically your part-time, your short-term, your project-based work, which come about from conversations and connections you have with your networks. And it just evolves. I can't explain to you how exactly it happens. You just have to trust that by building networks, connections, and talking to people about what you're interested in and what you're not sure about will open doors for you. Now, I've just realised we've hit 11:30, which is supposed to be the end time of this webinar. I do still have a bit of time, so I just want to know, are there any questions people have that I didn't answer, or you feel that you want to know a little bit more about? Is it appropriate to include a profile picture in your CV? Look, in general, we say the rule of thumb is to not put a photo in your CV, only because there is the chance that people looking at your CV could discriminate against you. Okay, most likely they won't, but they may be hoping for a young person, and your photo shows that you're more of a mature person. It might show that you're wearing a collar and they generally don't wear collars. Who knows? You just don't want to put that risk in there unless they ask for it. Now, bear in mind, obviously, your LinkedIn profile will have a headshot, and they will most likely go and have a look at your LinkedIn profile, but they're not going to do that before reading through your resume. So at least you're getting another step forward before they start really assessing and analysing what it is you offer. Okay, good point, good question. Do you think waiting until after final seminar to apply for jobs is leaving it too late? Zoe? Yes, I'm going to say yes. I would say to you, before final seminar, start exploring. That would be the key thing. Start exploring, look through Seek, see what is coming up, see what the trends are, see what you're noticing. Okay, see if the selection criteria are quite similar, which will make it a lot easier for you. And then if something comes up that you go, whoa, that looks really good, then just apply for one. Just get experience applying for one. Don't bombard yourself, but just focus on one or two that you think, oh, that would be awesome, because you don't want to miss that opportunity. Okay. Michael, thank you for that feedback. Michael says that I did run the job applications webinar and recommends watching the recording. Yes, and Michael is a perfect example of just turning a basic resume, no offense, Michael, but a basic resume that didn't highlight his skills enough into a really professional looking resume. An amazing outcome, amazing job at it. And that was just from him being honest and putting it out there. Technically, those jobs are also available for non-Australian citizens, international students who just finished PhD in Australia. Yeah, look, you're going to need to look into that in terms of citizenship and visas and all of those things. But the great thing is that opportunities overseas are probably a little more open now, because they're not expecting you to relocate. They're expecting you to work remotely. So that has opened up more opportunities for international and domestic students who want to have more experience internationally and don't want to travel. So there are those types of opportunities. All right, ladies and gents, it's been a pleasure working with you. I'm going to say thank you and farewell. This is actually my last webinar that I'm presenting as QUT's HDR Careers Educator for the careers section, and that's because I'm moving on to another job. I do have my LinkedIn profile there, so I hope to connect with each of you, and I will let the cohort know next week or maybe later this week that I'm moving on to a different journey back into the high performance sports world, but it has been a pleasure working with you over the last couple of years. And if you haven't already popped your student ID into the chat box, please make sure that you do, so that I can keep a record there of your attendance. And I look forward to still staying connected via LinkedIn, because we are all professionals and you just never know when our paths may cross again. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for your lovely feedback, and I hope it's been of assistance today. Thank you.